Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Alexandre Piquet. I'm the 2021 president of the BACCF and founder of Piquet Law Firm, a law firm based here in Miami. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the BACCF Leadership Series presented by Boeing International, Latin American region, and FedEx Latin America and Caribbean. Our event today will focus on e-commerce trends and world air cargo forecasts. We are delighted, sorry about that. We are delighted to welcome our speakers, Josh Collingwood, who's the Regional Director, Air Cargo Market Analysis at Boeing, and Gabriel Lima, CEO of eNext, E-Commerce Trends. Moderating today's event are Landon Loomis, VP for Global Policy and Managing Director, Boeing Brazil, and Guilherme Gatti, Vice President Customer Experience, FedEx Latin America and Caribbean. Any questions you may have throughout the presentation, kindly send by chat, and at the end of the presentations, we'll try and answer each question. Our thanks to our partners' efforts in putting this event together, and a special thank to the Brazilian Consulate General, Achei USA, and Raia Três. The BACCF is working very hard to bring our member programs with vital content. We are excited to announce that we'll be holding our first in-person event July 1st, welcoming the Mayor of Miami, Mr. Francis Suarez. On the 9th of July, please join us for a luncheon presentation by Roberto Campos Neto, President of the Central Bank of Brazil, Banco Central do Brasil. Please be sure to visit the BACCF website or call our offices, and we'll be delighted to speak with you about becoming further involved in our activities. It is my pleasure to introduce you to our first moderator today, Landon Loomis. Loomis, please go ahead and say a few words about you and introduce us, Josh Collingwood. Thank you.
Thanks, PK. Great to hear that you are returning to in-person events. I really appreciate the leadership of the Brazil American Chamber for keeping us all connected throughout COVID and making that responsible transition to in-person events. I know that we all want to be back together, and I really appreciate the role you guys are playing to bring us together. So we're delighted as Boeing to welcome our partners at FedEx. Guilherme Gabriel is our guest in our second of 4 Leadership Series webinars, which we are organizing this year together in partnership with the Brazil American Chamber of Commerce in Florida. This is an important venue for us to connect with our stakeholders and to share messages that are important, that Boeing is working with many partners across the region, and we're glad to have this opportunity. We're particularly excited to be working with FedEx in this specific issue today, because FedEx is a long-standing partner for Boeing in the cargo market. We've worked together on a lot of initiatives through this partnership. Of course, most recently during COVID, FedEx has played a key role, as have the express delivery service itself globally, to make vaccines available to the world. It's been an absolute essential function that the aviation system has provided, and that's really been thanks to, in large part, to the logistical expertise and capability of our partners at FedEx. We really appreciate your partnership with that. I also noticed that FedEx recently released its 2021 ESG report, and that just highlights again the leadership role that aviation and key partners of Boeing like FedEx are driving the issue and the messages related to the environment and sustainability, which are so important. We really appreciate the partnership with FedEx as we work together to really push the boundary and implement our ambitious vision for sustainability across our industry as well. So in that context of broad partnership, it's a great pleasure of mine to focus on cargo and what it means for our region. We've brought our expert on the topic from Boeing. It's my pleasure to introduce Joshua Collingwood. Joshua is our Regional Marketing Director. He runs market analysis for Boeing commercial airplanes, and in this role, he focuses on air cargo traffic forecasting and markets, understands these issues better than anybody, and is a great voice for us to hear from today on this issue. So without further ado, Josh, thanks so much for joining us, and over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Landon, for the introduction, and thank you all for the opportunity and time to kind of speak. Let me go ahead and get my screen shared here. All right, we all see that okay? Okay. All right, well, I'll go ahead and start, and just full disclosure, us at the Boeing Market Analysis are rarely short-winded, but I will do my best to keep this as brief and concise as possible. But it's always a great opportunity to kind of discuss the air cargo market and kind of talk through the trends that really kind of capture our attention and what we're seeing, and then how that kind of helps shape into our long-term kind of views. So what I'll do is kind of walk through some of the near-term trends that we've kind of really been watching, and then we'll touch on some of the long-term forecasts and what that kind of means for the freighter fleet. And hopefully that, you know, if we'll have some time at the end, I think after both presentations, for questions. But of course, I will open myself up as much as possible to future engagements, as well as kind of following up with questions and additional material and things that we focus on and produce. But I thought we would start on a more positive note with what's kind of going on right now. So if we look globally at air cargo traffic, you know, there was a lot of positive news last year kind of about what was going on, and it seemed to be quite the buzz that air cargo traffic was, or air cargo was doing so great. And to be honest, actually 2020 was one of the worst years on record in recent history. We saw it dip way down. You can kind of see that red line down there at the bottom, and you know, that with economies kind of grinding to a halt and shutting down, it really kind of stopped global trade, right? And so, you know, therefore cargo traffic, air cargo traffic was really hurt by that. And that was kind of coming off of a already difficult year in 2019, where we saw trade tensions and as well as kind of industrial production slowdowns, particularly in the automotive sector, really kind of impact air cargo. And although we saw a turning of the corner and what seemed to be light at the end of the tunnel kind of near the end of 2019, of course, that's when the pandemic hit and things, you know, countries went into lockdown, factories shut down, shipments shut down, right? So that's kind of where we found ourselves last year. But, you know, towards the second half of the year, we saw things really started to pick up. Industrial production opening back up, factories opening, global trade opening up, trying to kind of restart in a sense and make up for lost time. At the same time, we also saw, you know, some accelerated activity, I would say, around e-commerce trends, and just the express market in general seemed to be really working overtime. And you can see that really come into fruition with kind of that overall traffic climbing out of that big trough in 2020, and so far in 2021, every month has been a record month, highest that we've seen recorded in recent history. And that trend, you know, you can see that 2021 line kind of following the general seasonal trends. It's not just a giant mountain of freight coming in, right? But all above kind of those previous levels, which is really great to see. Of course, that's in a you know, a climate of reduced capacity, and not just slightly, right? It is wildly reduced capacity. You know, with the wide body passenger market, you know, usually contributing around 50% of traffic carriage in the lower hold. That capacity has been reduced significantly. You know, as low as, you know, 15% in April. You know, we've seen some activity of that kind of climb back up. Some of that being those kind of dedicated cargo only flights on passenger aircraft, and then others, you know, kind of being some of the slow resumption of international travel. But you can kind of see that lower hold passenger belly line really kind of stalling out right now, and it's gonna, the idea is that it's gonna take a little while to kind of get back up to those normal levels. And but more importantly, that I like to point out is that dedicated freighter line is just really incredible to me. That you know, they have been able to, operators with freighters have been able to flex their utilization up tremendously, being able to, delay retirements, pull airplanes out of retirement. The freighter industry in general has just really stepped up to the call to kind of take on this lack of capacity. And now, even in the face of growing demand and traffic levels at incredibly high levels, still running smoothly for the most part, albeit I'm sure there's a lot of tired operators out there, but they're getting the job done, and it's really incredible. If we look at across a lot of different trade lanes and regions of the globe, you can really see pretty similar trends. So this is kind of the year-over-year total capacity in some more recent months in the first quarter here. And you can see, a lot of them are starting to climb out, some of that being kind of hitting those low capacity levels starting in March. One thing to point out is kind of that bottom share shows how dependent that market is on that lower hold capacity. And so, the higher that number, we see, much more of an impact on that capacity. And one to point out here is that Europe, Latin America, kind of transatlantic traffic has traditionally been heavily dependent on passenger long haul service. And so you can see that, it's a market that is still having a really hard time, with capacity on the supply side. And then, if you look at North America, Latin America, it's a little less so actually. You have, and this is looking at wide body, lower hold kind of freight, right? So you have a lot of maybe single aisle capacity on that market. But as far as freight goes, there's actually a larger percentage of freighters versus wide body, and so you don't see as big of a negative impact there on that lane. So what does that mean with kind of this interesting inverse relationship with supply and demand? Well, we've seen yields and revenues just kind of take off, right? With yields so far year to date up 45%, but we really saw that trend throughout pretty much all of last year since May. It's kind of been a running elevated yield with kind of growth. Now, if you look at the monthly values, we're going to start hitting kind of flat growth in a sense year over year with kind of a base year effect, right? And it might not look like it's growing, but it's important to note that those yields are remaining at these elevated levels, and it's just it's something that is really helping the aviation industry, whether they're passenger carriers that are trying to capture freight and bring in some revenue, in the kind of downtimes here, or it's, the cargo operators that are able to really add to that top line right now, and just really bolster up their balance sheets in a sense with how profitable it is right now. And when we talk about those different operators, if we look at kind of who has benefited the most, it makes sense that, if you operate freighters, if you have them in your fleet, chances are you've been able to fare much better throughout this pandemic and year to date. And you can see, all cargo carriers up significantly year over year, express carriers up significantly, and even combination carriers. And we're starting to see some increase in passenger traffic year over year. And again, some of that might be a little bit of a base effect with it being so down in March and April and into May. So a little bit of a comparison there. I think if you look at it versus 2019 levels, Express is up 25%, all cargo carriers up 32%. Combination carriers are just barely up about 1%. And then the passenger only, we have down 36%. That's kind of where that other comparison is, and just shows how much harder they've had it without having that freighter capacity to be able to capture demands out there. So what about Latin America? So if we look at kind of where IATA monthly tracking has Latin America traffic. It's a little bit of a slower recovery as far as what 2021 is doing, but you can see it starting to cross over that 2020 level. And it's kind of right where the pandemic really kind of hit that global scale, right? And we saw a lot of reduction in activity. So you can kind of see it crossing that threshold, and hopefully we'll kind of continue its upward trajectory there. If we look at domestic Brazil, now this is somewhat limited to the number of carriers that are reporting, but you can see it's actually in a little bit better recovery than overall Latin America. And I think if, for the most part, the biggest reporting here is going to be the LATAM group and Azul. And I think, if we had some more data with some of the all cargo carriers and just more of the express and retail traffic going on, I think you would actually see that in a more improved position. So similar story in the capacity side. If we look at kind of Latin America, North America, one of those major trade lanes that we focus on in the Latin America market, you can really see, again, that passenger lower hold capacity just falling out, and the freighter community kind of left to pick up some of that slack where, before the pandemic, it was about a 36%, 64% split between the capacity offered between lower hold and freighter. We now see that at about 82% on the freighter side. So really kind of, again, picking up some of that slack, and you can see overall levels above kind of what we're seeing in the average 2019, but it's kind of holding fairly steady there for now. If we look at kind of intra-Latin America movements, that's kind of a similar story as well, where we had kind of a 60-40 split pre-pandemic. You now see freighters offering about 77% of that capacity, and just starting to approach kind of those pre-pandemic average levels there. So I think the big question is, how long does this inversion and dynamic kind of last? And, I think if we look at kind of what that international long haul expectation is for passenger travel, IATA has a forecast out there that says it's not going to hit back to 2019 levels until somewhere between 2023, 2024, right? And this is international RBKs. These are the ones that really contribute heavily to that lower hold cargo capacity that would be on offer other than freighter capacity, right? And so if we look at that, it's pretty clear that we're going to be in an interesting, volatile and dynamic situation, I think, for definitely through this year, and I think well into 2022. I think it's important to note that I don't think the passenger levels have to get to 2019 in order for cargo capacity to kind of normalize and stabilize, right? As more and more operators operate those longer haul flights, they might be operating them a little bit differently, right? Maybe not quite as high load factors on the passenger side, but that's going to open up cargo capacity, and you'll start to see that add into the market. But like many of this stuff, it's going to vary greatly by the region, right? But we do expect to see kind of, again, some of this current climate really extend well through next year, and then there'll probably be some certain regions that'll last a little bit longer. I think as we shift into some long term, it's just an important note that the industry, air cargo, is just a resilient one. It's been a growth industry for a very long time. There's been different decades of levels of growth. More recently, prior to kind of this larger downturn, we actually saw about 4.3% per year on a global level in the last decade. And as you can see, kind of back at the global financial crisis around 2009, we had a large dip there, but a strong recovery. And and we kind of see ourselves in the middle of a similar situation there. And if we look over those next 20 years that we forecast over, you can see trade growth and industrial production expected to grow about 2.8 and 2.3% respectively per year, and that supports our forecast of cargo traffic growing at about 4%, which then kind of rolls into a freighter fleet growth of about 2.4%. That will kind of support delivery of those jets coming over the next 20 years. And then different regions that you can look, the East Asia markets obviously are kind of the bigger markets and will continue to be so with those growths. And you can kind of see some of the different markets there growing with, domestic China being one that has a large focus on it. So, within the actual published World Air Cargo forecast, we do have chapters for Europe, Latin America, and Latin America and North America. But we do also do some kind of background research in domestic Brazil and try to forecast some of that as well. And so you can see kind of those three major flows and kind of the expected 20-year growth rate, with Europe, Latin America expected to grow about 4.1%, about on par with that kind of global average. A lot of that is really dependent on kind of the industrial production and kind of manufacturing relationships with Europe and Latin America. And then, with domestic Brazil, we see kind of a future growth of about 3.1% per year. That's really closely tied to the retail sales growth, and I think it's important to note that this forecast and being tied to retail sales, I think, has a very large upside. On the flip side, it could also have a very large downside, right? There's just a little bit more volatility there, but we actually saw, prior to the global financial crisis, domestic Brazil, by some estimates, was growing around 8.7% per year. More recently, in the last 5 years, it was about 3.6%. So I think there's an interesting opportunity as the e-commerce market grows there, and just additional express traffic starts to grow. We could really see that number actually ratchet upward further. So with that kind of growth in the air cargo traffic, we expect that to produce demand for around 2,430 deliveries of freighters, about 1,500 of those being converted, and the rest being new build. If we look regionally, you can kind of see, most of them are expected to go to Asia Pacific, but and when you look at kind of Latin America deliveries, we actually expect most of those to kind of be that standard body makeup, and that kind of falls in line with, again, some of that growth of that domestic market, e-commerce and retail traffic. As that grows, those standard body aircraft are kind of right-sized to serve those markets. As well as kind of the close interregional traffic that we would expect between countries and the Caribbean and things like that. It really supports kind of the growth there. But as always, I think especially with the spotlight of what freighters have done in this last year, we always like to point out that dedicated freighters have and will continue to carry over 50% of the air cargo traffic. They are really have proved to be a key player in this industry, and really kind of the backbone of air cargo, where passenger capacity just can't quite fill the void in many cases, and the specialty that the freighters can serve. And I think what will be interesting is the next update with this we'll likely have those 2020 numbers, right? And it'll be interesting to see the spike in cargo traffic carried, upwards of 70+%, right? Probably on freighters in 2020, and how that kind of tapers back down. But as long haul comes back on, that certainly will balance back out, but we do anticipate freighters to continue to carry the slight majority of that. So I think to wrap up here, just a couple things to remind you of. Cargo traffic, it's people were excited about it last year, but this year it really is truly in a recovery, and it seems to be a pretty robust one so far. Near term, the lack of capacity is really driving freighter demand. The utilization is up significantly, and that's likely, that environment and volatility is likely going to continue through 2022 as long haul markets recover. Freighters will continue to carry over half, albeit I think we'll see a much higher number this year and last year. All of that kind of leads to a global freighter fleet to grow more than 60% to a fleet of over 3,200 over the next 2 decades. And with that, I'd encourage you all to go to our website and download the World Air Cargo Forecast and read into that, and please reach out to us with any kind of follow-up questions.
Josh, thank you so much for sharing all this insightful information with us. We're going to leave the questions to the end. Anybody that wants to send questions, please use the chat. I just wanted to reinforce the words from Landon. We are very proud and honored as FedEx to co-share the leadership series here at the Brazilian American Chamber of Commerce with Boeing. Boeing is a long-lasting partner of FedEx. We are both vendors and customers of each other's, and we really appreciate the partnership and working together. Looking forward for many, many, many more, following this positive perspective that Josh shared with us. Moving next in our agenda, I would like to invite Gabriel Lima. Gabriel is the CEO of eNext. Gabriel holds a Bachelor in Marketing from the ESPM University and a Master in Business Administration from INSPER, having worked for Submarino, B2W, which is the Brazilian largest e-commerce company. Many of the ones in the audience here should know. From the 2015 until eNext Foundation in 2008. Then Gabriel has more than 300 e-commerce and MarTech projects developed in different industries and segments. He is the proud author of the book Comércio Eletrônico, Melhores Práticas do Mercado Brasileiro. Gabriel, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, Guilherme, thank you very much for the introduction. I have a presentation here to share with you all, if I may. Oops. Can you see my screen? Okay, well, then I will begin my presentation. So the e-commerce has been growing constantly in the last 10 years. And during the pandemic, we had a spike, and we grown more in 10 weeks than in the previous 10 years. And this is very significant because it's not only a behavior change, but it's also an industry change in the retail landscape in the country. And now e-commerce represents almost 13% of all retail sales in the country. And there has also been, in the last 10 years, a change in the consumer behavior when we look at what are consumers expecting to purchase online. So at the beginning, consumers were looking at price, and now they are looking for experience, and they are looking for an opportunity to acquire knowledge as well as products with quality. And in the local market here in Brazil, we've seen that this digital impact that we are having throughout the pandemic is also changing the landscape of digital advertising. And we had a market that was driven by traditional media advertising, and the digital marketing has been growing constantly, and there is still a lot of room to keep growing. And what we've been analyzing is that the digital marketing landscape has changed a lot as well during the pandemic. So what we've seen is that digital market will outperform the growth of traditional advertising for the next few years. And among the channels that will grow, marketplace advertising will be the ones that will grow faster. So as we can see here, the compounded growth from 2019 to 2023 of digital advertising will be 5.6%, and marketplace advertising will grow 70% during this period. And this is a tendency, because what we've seen is that the landscape in Latin America is going towards what more major markets such as US and China has. So this is pre-pandemic numbers, and we had in China retail e-commerce representing almost 40% of retail, and digital advertising, and especially the advertising on marketplaces on Alibaba represented 40% of the $8 billion, which were the total volume of investment in digital advertising in China. And in US, the e-commerce represented almost 11% of the retail sales pre-pandemic. Amazon represented 10% of all digital advertising ad spending. And here in Latin America and in Brazil is the same. Marketplaces represent less than 1% of all digital advertising pre-pandemic. So there's a lot of room to grow here. And when we look at how people are searching and how this search is happening, we know that when someone already knows the product that he's willing to buy, 75% of this search happens on marketplaces, and 25% of those searches happen on Google here in Brazil. And Mercado Libre represents 23% of all the searches in the marketplaces. In Mexico, we have almost 85% of all searches happening on marketplaces, and Mercado Libre represents 21% that figure. And in Argentina, 85%, almost 85% of all those searches as well. And Mercado Libre represents 55%, sorry, 55% of all these searches. So the e-commerce is growing. Marketplaces are driving this growth, and the digital advertising is growing, and digital advertising on marketplaces is growing in a faster pace. And when we look at the 5 largest marketplaces here in Brazil, we have Mercado Libre as the largest in user volume, followed by B2W, which has Americanas and Submarino, 2 of their most strong brands. On third place, we have Magazine Luiza, which is also a very strong marketplace player that has several brick and mortar stores located throughout Brazil, followed by Amazon.com and Via Varejo, which is the 5th largest marketplace player. And when we look at the combined number of unique visitors among all those marketplaces, the number is larger than the audience of Google and Facebook combined. And what we've seen is that during the pandemic, there has been a growth of traffic to the Google channels, and on the other hand, Facebook channel has decreased by 6%. So this also comes to further add to the initiative of the growth in marketplace and the growth in marketplace ads. And what we do to help our clients here at Enext, we help them to improve their paid media execution, helping them to drive the investment throughout those digital channels, such as Google, Facebook, and all the marketplaces, as well as help them to improve their search engine optimization and their CRM initiatives on digital channels. So that's the presentation that I had to share, and I would be delighted to help to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. We really appreciate it. Landon, if I may, I would take the first question. Is that okay?
Yeah, please go right ahead.
All right. You know that we are touching here 2 very important subjects that really have changed the landscape of the market for FedEx. On one hand, we saw the e-commerce growing so fast as a result of the pandemic, as Gabriel shared with us. And then on the other hand, we saw capacity disappearing because we don't have passenger flights, and all of that belly space went away. It put a lot of pressure in companies like, not only like FedEx and UPS, but also on the marketplaces that depended on that capacity to get their products to market. We have seen Amazon, we have seen Mercado Libre becoming transportation companies, like overnight, really fast. So as you guys analyze, and maybe that's for you, Josh, as you analyze the carriers as express, freighters, or passenger belly space, how do you see the marketplaces now playing as one of the main players in the international air cargo transportation and domestic as well?
Yeah, thanks. I think that's a really interesting. You're right. It's kind of accelerated a lot of growth, right? I think we've kind of been looking at this for a couple of years now, where we have these segments of express carriers, all cargo, combination carriers, and then the passenger lower hold only. And we're recognizing a need for kind of a new segment, and that's kind of the we're still trying to. I like the marketplace carriers. That's a good way of defining them. We've also kind of thought about them as like distribution networks, right? They're a really interesting case to look at because it's almost like a cost center. They're not necessarily selling their capacity. They are really just utilizing, their own lift, their own resources to get their own products to the right distribution centers, to the place where there's higher demand, right? It's kind of being able to shift those flows better, faster, and in-house, and managing it more of a cost center. And so that's a very difficult model, because when you are on the one side just charging your subscription customers maybe a certain fee per year, such as Amazon, right, and then trying to provide 1 day, 2 day shipping, that's just a very difficult business model. So there's a lot of nuances there that I think those companies are going to grow as fast as they can to be able to support and maybe minimize external costs. But it's still a very unknown how, is there going to be a pivot point where they maybe try to monetize that and commercialize a little bit, right, to kind of help support those growing costs. And then I think to the other side too is, do we see passenger lower hold model shifting? And I don't know if that's necessarily going to be a big long-term change. I think there's a lot of value that's been shined onto air cargo and the need to have capacity with the lack of lower hold, but that in the end, the passenger ticket does hold a little bit more weight and value to an airline. That is their core business. Though they will return to kind of being driven by passenger demand, and cargo will kind of still just be that extra revenue that they're able to capture. I think in some of the bigger network carriers, you'll see maybe a little bit more clout in their cargo department in certain lanes and markets, being able to maybe help drive some of that decision making as far as what markets to serve. But as far as big fundamental changes, I don't think we'll see much in the business model on the passenger carriers changing in the long term.
Thank you. I guess you answered my question and also the question that came here on the chat. So really,
yeah, I thought it tied in pretty well, actually.
That is perfect. Landon, you have a question to drop, or can I go for the next?
Please go right ahead.
Go. All right. So my question now is to Gabriel. Gabriel, when we look at what the marketplaces are doing to the e-commerce space, what will happen to the small and medium business? Will they be forced to either be on market space or disappear from e-commerce? And the large guys like Apple, why would I promote my own Apple store online versus selling it in Amazon or Mercado Libre?
Very interesting question. Well, actually, what we've seen is that the small retailers and small brands, they are taking advantage of marketplace and selling their products through the marketplaces, as well as selling on their own e-commerces. So marketplaces for those kind of business is a new channel, and this is why we have presented that the investments on marketing on marketplaces is growing a lot, because those companies, brands and small retailers, they are promoting their brand and their products on marketplaces to follow their growth. And brands such as Apple that you mentioned, and so many others such as L'Oreal, Unilever, and others, they are some of them, they are also selling and promoting their products on marketplaces, but their own e-commerce still has a more meaningful experience to their clients, because it's their own environment, so they can provide a better or a unique experience that the marketplace cannot. So this is what we've seen here in the market.
Yeah, and one of the things that they differentiate is for what's called free shipment. We know free doesn't really exist. It's somewhere it's there in the price that you pay, right? And especially the marketplaces, as we were talking about with Josh now, they develop their own network. And when you are in Mexico, when you're in Brazil, you see the advertising they do is not about the marketplace, it's about being there next day. So the competitive advantage that they are playing against is a transportation competitive advantage, which is quite interesting, right?
Yes, distribution has always been a challenge in Brazil and other Latin American countries. And this is part of what the consumers are expecting. So having a one-day delivery is something that changed the conversion rates. We have an internal study that when you drop 1 day in the delivery time, your conversion increase almost 20%. So it's very significant on a consumer perspective, and it's very important to have a structured transportation and operation strategy.
Can I ask a question, just kind of dovetailing on that, which has to do with the regulatory side of import and export. You know, I know that that's been an important issue in bilateral talks between Brazil and the United States, and they concluded a mini trade deal, if you will, that did address trade facilitation as a generic topic. Can you comment on how important those resolving those issues are, and then have you seen any progress? You know, as kind of trade agreements or sorts of mini agreements are reached, do we see that reflected in any of the statistics as you're tracking the growth of e-commerce?
Sorry, but I've not seen any improvement on that recently.
Yeah, well, I think that result in and of itself is important to understand. That, you know, I remember hearing a Brazilian official say that the most important trade agreement that Brazil can reach is a trade agreement with itself to move goods from one side of the country to another. But I think that, you know, as we think about the potential for this business model and what it means for internal movement of goods and then also import and export, that there is a regulatory component that is important, right? The business environment itself, in addition to you know, what the companies offer, I think is an important context that we can keep an eye on too.
Yes. Well, we know that you know, the growth of e-commerce in Brazil, it's not only local, it's also international. But we don't have the figures on how the international e-commerce trade affected the e-commerce growth in Brazil.
Yeah, it's still very small compared to what the domestic e-commerce represents in Brazil, right? And somebody mentioned here in the chat, one of the challenges that we have is returns. Because once you sold something abroad or when you buy something on e-commerce, if you don't like, something is wrong, to deal with customs authorities to just return in Brazil is a major headache. I don't know if you hear that from your clients or if it's something that you don't see as.
Yes, that's one of the main issues why it's hard for our clients to sell on international markets. And there is also a financial issue because when you sell abroad and you have to do any type of devolution or when you have to change your product, the flow of how you issue an invoice to enter to get the merchandise back in Brazil is it's not well regulated. So this is very tough.
There's a question here about Argentina, but that also reminds me of another trend that we are seeing. A lot of out of Argentina and from Brazil, which is very local products. We see people that live abroad now that with the e-commerce, they want to have more of that local flavor. So the amount of dulce de leche going out of Argentina and I don't know, bees going out of Brazil has increased a lot. Have you guys seen it, and any recommendation maybe from you, Gabriel, for those that are selling in e-commerce locally and have an intention of going international?
Well, we've seen it here in Brazil. People are buying from local stores, and there has been also a very consistent growth of delivery apps here in Brazil, such as Rappi and iFood, and they work kind of a marketplace where local stores and local vendors can promote their products and fulfill the order within hours in the region. So yes, we've seen that this is growing. This is growing a lot here in Brazil.
Landon, I think we covered the questions, right?
Yep, I believe so.
Yeah. I do have one here that is about the presentations. Would the presentations that we have seen today, would they be available through the chamber or directly with you guys? Who's interested, what do they do?
Sure. I can share.
Yeah, ours will be available. We can get those out.
Sharing the presentations with us, we'll put them up online following the event with the recording of the event as well.
Excellent. Listen, time goes by really fast when we're having fun. 5 minutes to close. Please allow me to back to the president.
Let me just get in one thing before we wrap up, which is just to say one comment that, you know, to satisfy the demand that we've seen, you know, that Josh pointed to, you know, we need to have the freighters available to, you know, to move this traffic around and satisfy the demand that Josh was pointing to. So one important step that Boeing is taking, which I should have mentioned at the front, and I'll just do so now quickly, is that we have freighter conversion capability that'll take the, you know, the underlying commercial aircraft and then convert it into a freighter special purposed for the delivery of cargo. And that capability, we have 3 sites outside the US, that's all in China. And we just announced the first capability that we're in the world outside of China is now going to be in Latin America. And so we, with a partnership with Copesa, we're, you know, had launched a freighter conversion program in Costa Rica. And to me, that's an important signal that our region plays an important part in the interconnectivity of these dynamic changes that we're witnessing as we see the in the maintenance of cargo as a really key kind of revenue driver through an otherwise very difficult and bleak period in commercial aviation. You know, cargo has sustained many airlines, and that story, that connectivity, the, you know, $7 trillion of goods that our industry moved around the world before the pandemic. We're going to get back to that, and we're going to do it with inputs like these converted freighters that are going to be manufactured in our region in Latin America. And so I think it's an important story to understand that we're not just consumers, we're not just producers, we're all, you know, it's the whole chain is here. And those are the kinds of relationships that, you know, from a Boeing Latin America perspective, we want to highlight. We want to look for more partnership opportunities in Brazil, as by far the largest market is driving a lot of that demand and a lot of that opportunity that we see. So again, a great group to address, and just wanted to bring that one point in as well. Thanks, Guillermo.
Oh, please say some of that for FedEx. Leonard, always a pleasure. I mean, FedEx and Boeing, we have been partners for so many years, and I really appreciate us sharing this leadership series here. Alexandre, maybe back to you for closing, Mr. President.
Yes, it was an amazing presentation. Thank you, guys. Thank you, speakers, moderators, and everyone who's been participating. We welcome your feedback on our events, and looking forward to greeting you in person July 1st for our first in-person event after more than a year. I think. So Four Seasons Hotel, July 1st with Mayor Francis Soares, and July 9th with Roberto Campos, President of Banco Central of Brazil. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you. Thank you, Hill. Okay.